All right, we're live here. So, Hoop Fam, I appreciate you joining us. Appreciate you the time. You got the Sports Connect here, A.Williams basketball. I got my man Branson Wright here, who we're going to talk about the women of Troy with incredible documentary. If you haven't seen it, it tells a story about a story that needs to be told. So he is one of the producers of this on this project. I've known Branson for a while. This goes back to my days in Nike basketball when he was covering basketball as well at the Cleveland Plain Dealer. And so Branson's a really good guy and told me back then, and this was, almost 10 years ago, told me that, hey, I have a passion to create projects and tell stories that the world should know. So shout out to for continuing on that journey and being part of this incredible project. And Coach Fred Williams, who I followed for a long time as a basketball nerd and having experienced myself in the WNBA and women's and being such a fan of women's basketball, Fred's resume is impeccable, and he has done virtually everything that you could do in the basketball world. And I was fortunate a couple of weeks ago to be on another podcast with Coach and his incredible wife, Miss Botali. And so Coach has been gracious enough to share his insight with me. And I appreciate, Coach, your fellowship and continuing to develop along with me. And Coach was an assistant coach on this great USC team that, again, was so impactful on women's sports, the culture, you name it. And Coach is now an assistant coach with the LA Sparks, longtime head coach in the W, Utah, Dallas, etc. So I've been following Coach for a while. So again, Coach, appreciate you joining.
Hey, thank you for having me. I'm glad to be here to share my thoughts and whatever knowledge I have on this women of Troy and basketball venue.
No, that's a lot. That's a lot. So again, I appreciate you. So let's dive right into the questions. And if we have comments and questions along the way, I'll make sure that I share those and, get both of you all's insight on those as well, because I'm sure people that are joining and watching will probably have some questions and want to hear you guys' insight and not having me talking the entire time. So, Branson, I'll ask you this. I'll say this first. As a basketball fan, this team, the Women of Troy, are actually part of my introduction and socialization into basketball. I have an aunt that was a basketball player. Auntie Yvette, if you're on here. So she was a basketball player. And at the time I was a kid and she was playing, I didn't like basketball at all. I was a football, baseball guy. And those were my dreams and those were my goals and didn't like basketball. And, I'm dating myself when I say this, this is the time where you lived in a house and you had one TV. So, so with that being said, age is the priority. So she was older than me. If she wanted to watch basketball, turn off a football game, she did that. And so I say that because she introduced me to this team. She introduced me to the great players on this team, which is part of my socialization in the basketball, women's basketball, but basketball. And then that led to me liking the Lakers. I have an uncle that was a Laker fan as well. But so I say that because I'd like to hear your insight, Branson, on what spurred you to dive into this project.
Well, first of all, thanks for having me on the show, inviting me on. And hey to Coach Fred, I haven't seen him since we started shooting the documentary in 2018. Wow.
Yeah.
Time flies. So good to see you again, Coach.
Nice to see you too.
Well, the whole thing with the so you want me to start at how this project got started or when I first got introduced to the women as far as a fan?
Your stage, lay the groundwork, do it all.
Well, okay. I'll go back as a fan. I played high school basketball and I think Cheryl and I think she's the high school class of 82 and which I'm 81. So I knew I read about her in the magazines, and I wasn't particularly a fan of women's basketball. I mean, our girls in high school had a team. I would watch them. I didn't see a whole lot of the women's game. And my mother, she played in high school, and she would come to the court sometime to prove to me that she could play. So so I was a little familiar with the women's game. But when I started watching USC women, I mean, there was two things that jumped out. Well, three things. One, that they could play. Two, that they had swag. And remember, you know, I'm an 18, 19-year-old kid, and they were fine. And I had never seen the triple threat, you know, at my young age. So I said, man, you know, I'm going to try to watch them. Now, as you talk about one TV being in the house, and this is really before cable, so we really couldn't see a lot of their games unless it was a national game, unless it was the national championship or semis. So you would read the papers, look at the magazines, and I just said, man, this is a really, really good women's team. In fact, when we'd go to the court, the guys, you know, we'd pretend to be the Lakers and the Celtics and things like that. Yep. But the conversation would always go to, hey, did you see USC? Did you see them? Yeah. And how those women could play. So at an early age, or as a young teenager, I just thought there was a remarkable team, and they really introduced me to the women's game.
No, that's all of those points I concur. And, you know, again, as a guy that has Southern California roots by way of St. Louis, again, they meant so much to me in terms of socialization and introduction to the game. And for all those reasons that you listed, right? So yeah. And, you know, so Coach, I'll ask you also, when you start talking with Branson and others about this particular project, what was your initial reaction? What did you think?
Well, I was very excited about it. You know, Branson, you know, him and I talked on the phone, God, for almost a couple of years, maybe a few years on it. And he was thinking if it would be a great idea to, you know, maybe put a project together. And, you know, he was, you know, asked me questions about the team now and then. I may get a call 1 month, and then 2 months later, another call. And so it led up for about 2 or 3, maybe 4 years. And, you know, once he put it to me in front that this might be something that, you know, somebody want to pick up and do, I was like, man, this is great, because everybody needs to know the Women of Troy story and about these ladies and what they're all about.
No question. No question.
A.W., you there? You froze on us.
Yeah, he did. And he the man with all the technology.
He got all the juice over there. He's got all the juice. He'll come back. They let the juice back in.
Oh yeah, it'll come back. So everybody good on your end, Coach?
Everybody's good on my end. You know, just gearing up, getting ready for hopefully a WNBA season. We're looking to hear something, I think, within the next week or so, and see when we will have a timeline if we're going to have a season or not. But hopefully, I'm pretty about 80% sure that things will go down.
Yeah, that'll be good. I mean, the precaution that people are taking, and I think as far as when the NBA comes back, you know, maybe limiting fans, or you know, I just think we do all we can, and you know, to get some activity instead of just. I mean, I was looking the pandemic 100 years ago. You know, they still played.
Yeah, yeah.
I saw baseball and
at
least baseball. I know how they wore the mask and things like that. So, and you know, we have more medicine now, and hopefully we learn from the past by doing the quarantine as soon as we did.
Yeah, I think we all just have to be real patient with everything and let it all flow, right now. Okay, he's back.
Back. I don't know what happened there. So appreciate you all for keeping it going, staying patient with us while all of this is going on. So yeah, I think I sort of got back in when you all were talking about making the best out of everything. So that is apropos for what just happened. I can't explain, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So I actually want to ask you this, Coach. When that collection of talent that you coached, can you speak to? And I'm diving a little bit, and I want to get your insight on this as well, Branson. With us all being basketball nerds here, Coach, can you detail and talk about how fundamentally sound all of those players have to be in order to click and play together when you have such a of great talent, and the stage has to be sort of big enough where everybody can display their talents?
Well, yeah, I mean, every player on the team had a role. It was good chemistry amongst the ladies. From the 10th to the 15th player that's on the team had a role, and a lot of that role was in practice. We had some heavy hitters in practice. Most of the practices were the games because we really got after each other in practice. But the talent of Cynthia Cooper and Cheryl and the McGee twins at the front line, they just really kept good balance on the floor of improving their skills every day in practice. And then when game time came around, it was just on. It just made things happen.
For sure. I again love watching them play. So Branson, give me your insight as a basketball guy as well. How that, especially now we keep hearing about players always saying, are there enough balls? Is the stage big enough for X player to share? All of that. Talk about, again, as watching that as a basketball fan and that collection of talent working together the way that it did.
I think it just goes a credit, to the coaching and the fact that, these women wanted to win at all costs. So, I mean, they all were, best players on their teams in high school and some of the best, in the nation on this one team. And I think, the one thing about them being the best prior to getting there, that they were winners. And so when they were there, that winning attitude was still there. So a lot of times when you get a collection of stars, it's, as you said, one ball and how are they going to make that work? But I think the one goal, if they all share that in winning, then you're going to do whatever it takes. And then they definitely did.
Yeah. And they were also great, great players, but they also were great students,
Yes.
Going to USC, a private institution. They really carried themselves well on and off the basketball court.
And
no
even
question.
Now, I was just saying that adding to coaching, even now, I mean, the PhDs and they all got their degrees and they're all just doing some great things after college, and which shows what kind of women they were and what kind of women they are.
No doubt. And that leads me to the next question. So I'll start with you, Branson. Tell me about, with what you just said, talk about their cultural impact. So for us on the men's side, for us, and I'm going to generation here, of course, the Fab Five, and then before them, it was UNLV, and then before UNLV, it was Georgetown. These women should be mentioned in that same realm, in that same vicinity in terms of their impact from a cultural standpoint and all the things they were able to accomplish at a place like USC. Again, Southern California roots. I know it personally. I felt it. I breathed the air, etc. So talk about that, and then, Coach, I want you to talk about that as well. That was my next question. I appreciate it.
I always wonder if social media was around back then the way it is now. If it was, they all would probably be multimillionaires because of the talent and because of just being, well-rounded women and, great in front of the camera and just their personalities. I mean, they would have just been even more out there. But even from the time that they were in, and the fact how they brought women's basketball from, not really being watched. And in fact, the other key point is, basketball was a Southern and Eastern thing, women's basketball. And then you had a team out West that really helped grow the sport, which really just, tip your hat off to them for doing that. But they just changed the culture. And I think it's important too, the fact that as we talk about them being attractive, that you can be attractive and you can play, and you don't have to be rugged, if you will, and you can still have the feminine qualities about you and still be a great athlete, and definitely express that, in my opinion.
And I echo what Branson said. As far as the culture, they really changed a lot of the style and the reputation of women's basketball players. Looking like boys and playing like boys, but they played like women. They played the game the way it should be played. Their style, their culture was that when they're on the floor, they just played hard. But when they're off the floor, they came out with nice clothes, dressed right, and looking very, very presentable, to the publics and the fans. But the overall game for them changing the culture of women's basketball, I felt that the women of Troy really set a big footprint in the sand for a lot of women teams to follow suit of how a program should act and how a program should be ran.
No question. Bruce, what's going on? Appreciate you joining. So I'll ask you, Coach, when you first saw Cheryl, when you were recruiting her, what was your first thought process when the first time you saw her, and how did that recruiting process go?
Well, a lot of it was, some of the other coaches were in the process of looking at her. Myself, I was at a game where she scored 105 points in a game. It was unbelievable. But I was on the outskirts of really looking at how she was going to develop into a college player, and I just knew that a woman who could do that with a big ball, not the small ball, but the big ball, and without 3 points, you know what I'm saying? So you knew that was going to be a special person and a special player for somebody to get in the program. And it was just Linda Sharp did a fine job recruiting her and making ensure that she came to the Women of Troy.
No, it was, again, having Southern California roots and again, my socialization to the sport and just hearing and did you hear about what Cheryl did? And just, it was just amazing. And again, as you alluded to earlier, Branson, if there were a social media component tied to these great athletes and to be able to really tell their story, they can, and it's apropos now because we're talking about college athletes being able to make money off of their likenesses now. And for them to have been able to do that while they were there, especially when you start, talking about and considering the fact that you see me?
Uh-oh, did you freeze up? Again?
They putting AW on the freeze today.
I'm telling you. Putting that amoeba defense on him.
they put the boxing one on him today.
Oh, that's funny about the boxing one. In high school, we played this team, and this kid, he got about like 30-something points on us. We played him regular, 30-something points. So the coach said, next game, we're going to do a boxing one. Branson, you got him. And I'm like, okay. And I was training like a boxer. I put his picture in my locker. I was focused. I was ready.
Yeah.
In fact, before the game, the band played the theme from Rocky.
Uh-oh.
So I'm really pumped.
Yeah.
Coach, he had 40.
Oh, wow. Wow.
Wow. I'm like, we got all prepared and I'm psyched up, and then he put 40 on us. I'm like, okay. So I think the third time we played him in the tournament, we played him regular.
Yeah. Wow. I know he had to take about 50 or 60 shots to get that 40.
He took shots.
Yeah.
8-minute quarters. No 3-pointers back then either.
Right. That's amazing, man, how they put up those points back then without 3-pointer. And for the women, I look at the women, how they score a lot of these points these days with the small ball, but it was more back in the older days. They were scoring 30, 25, 28 with the small ball.
It's great. Can you imagine if Shirley and them played with the small ball?
Oh man, it'd have been it'd have been even faster, because that ball has a funny way to come off that rim. You got to have a nice touch of shooting that ball, but it's still. I think the passing would have been a little bit faster and crisper, and then the pace of the centers and forwards going inside the paint would have been more finesse, because they can grab the ball a little bit stronger.
Wow. And then and the ball handling and
all that. Yeah.
It'd have been crazy.
Yeah. It's like the guys, you take a ladies ball and then, you want to play 3-on-3 or 5-on-5 until the guys to play with it. They can't do it.
No.
They be bricking layups. They be shooting like outside jumpers. The ball go on the side of the rim. I'll be laughing.
Because I know there's a court up here, and a lot of the old timers, and they'll play with the women's ball, and I'll play with them. I'm like, man, this ball is it just throws you off, just a little,
just a little bit. Yeah, it ain't much, but it's just a little bit, man. But it's all in the touch. It's all in having practice, with that ball, and just getting familiar with it when you switch over to the big ball. Once you switch over to the big ball, that big ball feels like a beach ball.
Right.
Man, I ain't gonna ever put this in the basket. This thing's so big now.
Man, I'm trying to think, what year did they bring the women's ball in?
I forget offhand, but I want to say it was in the late 80s, maybe 90s. Because I know it was pretty close when the WNBA was getting ready to kind of start up in '97. So it might have been in the '90s.
Yeah, because I was thinking, because when Georgia Ann Wells, when she dunked, she had regular ball.
Regular ball, yeah.
And that was 84.
Yeah.
84. So, yeah, I would say late 90s, late 80s, early 90s.
Yeah, somewhere in there. Yeah, that's something I got to look up, because if I get asked that question again, I got to know that answer.
Oh, yeah. Yes. In fact, that'd be a good story, too, now you think about it.
Yes, it would.
That women's ball and how it changed the game.
It changed the game. Absolutely.
That ball. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I might have to.
The lead the lead on is how the ball bounces.
How the ball bounces.
How the ball bounces. Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
Because you remember when the NBA about 2006 or 7 tried to come with a new ball.
Yeah.
And it was something was wrong with guys would get splinters and not splinters, but cuts on their hands and all kind of things, and it didn't even last the whole season. Yeah,
it was the fiber in the ball, and the shooters were having a problem with it a lot, because I remember Reggie Miller making a statement about it, because it was like putting blisters on their hands and like little cuts. But and they're thinking about changing the ball this year for the NBA. Next year, should I say? Yeah.
Hey, well, he just hit me up and said that's it for our show.
Okay.
Having some technical difficulties.
All right.
Hey, but it's good to see you, man.
Nice seeing you too.
When this clears up, man, let me see. So I know you guys will. I think the closest you'll come is Indianapolis.
Yeah. Where are you? Where are you now?
Cleveland. I'm in Cleveland.
Okay.
Yeah.
We used to have a WNBA team in Cleveland that was pretty good. The Rockers. Yeah.
Yes. I had season tickets.
Yeah.
I enjoyed it.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed that.
Yeah. Well, I think Chicago, Indiana is probably the closest to you.
Yeah.
But,
Oh no, Detroit.
Detroit.
Do they still have a team?
They don't have a team.
Okay.
Detroit team went from Detroit to Tulsa, Tulsa to Dallas, Dallas. Yeah. That it's in Dallas now.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So yeah. So I guess Indy. Yeah, I'll check
uh-huh.
you out in Indy.
Sounds good.
Okay. Oh, wait a
All
minute.
right.
Is he trying to come back?
You trying to come back?
Let me see.
Yeah.
We trying to come back in.
I got about 15 minutes for my next meeting. So I know he was trying to get all this in within 40 minutes to a half hour.
Yeah, he's having
a hard time.
Yeah.
We can reschedule. You want to
Oh
make it
yeah.
happen? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not doing anything.